Hi everyone, welcome to another Reasons and Resources. So in our journey through the programming language landscape, we are now up to Idris. Idris? Can't even say it right. Idris. So for this series I started here in Lua, and we've been all the way through these languages and we are now here. So I'll be the first to admit now we're really getting into the weeds, and we're getting into languages that I have zero knowledge of, but sometimes they'll come up in a very strange way in terms of me suddenly getting ready for filming, and then sort of just by pure luck something else comes down and I go down a partial rabbit hole. So the only reason I have for learning this language was because recently, and this was actually after I got the materials prepped ready to give you some resources and talk about reasons for learning it outside, why I might be learning, which was at that point was zero. I was digging around looking at ways in which companies are sort of using certain languages to validate AI output. And I sort of stumbled across possible use cases using theorem provers, which I haven't properly explored yet. It was a mini ponder. It wasn't one of my big morning ponders that I've been sort of talking about. It was a little mini ponder, and I was looking at, I think there was a job I saw come up to do with I think it was validating Rust code using AI, and I noticed that there was sort of mentioning some techniques in there, and I saw this come up. And Idris, the connection is that you can use it as a proof assistant. So at some point I know I'm going to get curious and go down a sort of proof assistant LLM hybrid. And I know last night I was sort of looking at LLMs and is it Markov chains? So there'll be some sort of video about that. But I'm looking at mashups now, interesting mashups between LLMs, foundational models, those sort of things, and other techniques in the history of AI, which might be useful as orchestrators. And so I was sort of, my curiosity peaked when I saw mentioned about proof assistance. So for me, my reason for any future uses is this sort of hybrid pondering I'm doing on certain things. So no doubt that will turn into some sort of tiny experiment stroke pondering mage episode. Now, general reasons that are out there why you might want to learn Idris. Relatively speaking, it's a newer language, so only 18 years old, as opposed to some of the ones we've been looking at. It is a general purpose programming language, but also I notice it claims to be purely functional. As I said, I can't, when I see the name purely functional mentioned, immediately I have visions of lots of brackets for some reason, because I keep thinking of Lisp and Clojure and stuff like that. So I must admit I'm not familiar with the code shapes for this. It's cool because I really don't know what to expect in terms of the code shapes from that point of view. But yeah, purely functional programming language, dependent types, lazy evaluation. That's an interesting thing to look at if you've not explored that. And we've got this totality checker. So yeah, some reasons you might be interested in looking at these sort of dependent types, languages that use dependent types. So that could be an interesting rabbit hole to go down, or an interesting reason to learn a language that has it, or this particular language. Types can depend on values. This allows you to express precise properties about your program in its type signature. So various things that revolve around that. And sort of connected to that, you have type-driven development. So, using types as a way of guiding your construction of the program. So you've got this sort of, compiler, type checker, providing you assistant feedback and helping you fill in the details. So that's going to help with, certain aspects of robustness. And that, I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but I've used various type checking programs, and I'm trying to think of a language where it became really cool. And I can't remember which one I was working in, whether it was Scala or something else. And what I found is when I was using the plugin, the form of checking it was doing as I was going along was so powerful that by the time I got to compile the program, it was already correct by construction. So that's something to think about if you haven't experienced that. Now, I do know that obviously now there's a plethora of plugins available in Visual Studio Code. That's probably more likely to happen anyway, but you'll notice as you explore certain languages, just because of the way certain linters might be integrated into it or various other things, that correct by construction type development it becomes more noticeable. So by the time you get to actually compile the code, there's no surprises. Another reason you might want to learn it is just learning advanced concepts. So it's sort of like another lens on computer science concepts that maybe get abstracted away in other languages. So I find that's really useful if you have a language where certain concepts are really in your face. That can be quite useful as an excuse to learn that language. So one thing has come up before, you might decide to learn factor because you really want to understand the stack, which maybe is, a lot of the time is abstracted away. Or you might want to learn another language because of dependent types, we've already mentioned, or some aspects of functional programming or formal verification, those sort of things. So it sort of gives you a glimpse into what that style, that concept, how those concepts manifest themselves, what that might look like in a language. And then, not necessarily because it's a modern language, but I suppose that does help, is because a lot of these modern languages are building on what's happened before, and sometimes they are built in response to stuff that's happened, good or bad. And that's an interesting rabbit hole in and of itself to go down, actually, is languages that are as a response to other languages. What you might find is that you might find the newer languages may well be, not always, but may well be a little bit cleaner and a little bit more coherent than what came before or what inspired by it, and sort of get round those historical quirks and extensions that have sort of been bolted onto a language after the fact. So it's like, starting off with a fresh sheet of paper, in effect. So that might be another reason for doing it. So I'll include some links just to further down the Wikipedia article, so you can have a little bit of a look at its features, get a rough idea of what the code shapes look like, get some handy dandy links, but also I'll have all the other links I'm going to talk about in terms of resources. I don't expect to find it on the Stack Overflow survey, so I'll do a quick scan, but I think we're on to a bit of lost cause, and we might find that as we get down in the weeds now with this series. Yeah, we might not see so many on this list. So this was the 2024 list. 2025 is out. I'll include a link to that here so you can explore it as well. Remembering, as I've said, my favourite section is now no longer in there. I keep longingly checking to see if they've added in 2.4 after the fact, but I think it's gone for good. And I haven't had a chance to download the actual raw data yet to see if I can maybe piece together something similar. So moving on to the actual resources now, after getting some of the reasons out of the way. Yeah, so we have the Idris-Lang website. So always good to start off any exploration, any pondering from the official website, for good or bad, and just see what's available there. So we've got, the downloads here. And some of these languages, obviously, there's a few hoops you have to jump through. I haven't got around to installing Idris yet because, yeah, like I said, it's further down the line. So this is great because now this episode is turning into my own resource video for going down these rabbit holes. Documentation for Idris 1 and 2. Then we have, there's a Manning book on this. Type-driven development with Idris. And I believe, yeah, it's written by the creator of Idris, which is always very nice. So there we have it. If you like you're old-fashioned like me, the paper version, but as you see down here, rather handy, and we'll be seeing a lot more of this now, haven't we? You can read the entire book for free, which is pretty cool. And it looks like this, which is very nice. And copy the code out. Away you go. Use a REPL. Run the examples at the Idris REPL. So we have an Idris tutorial. We have the Idris REPL, which I'll include so yeah, Idris comes with a REPL now. What I should do is see if I can, because it mentions it here, doesn't it? Unusually, I don't think I've got a link to the Idris REPL, but if I'd find it, I'm talking about the online one, so you don't even have to download it. It's probably been in here actually, which is why I probably didn't include it. But what I'll do is, after the fact, I'll track down, see if I can find an Idris REPL, and I'll include that in the links. What about that? There we go. Bonus material. Idris tutorial using the Idris REPL. There's the Idris Lang GitHub repository. So that's where you get sort of the most up-to-date source for the language. And then some, as usual, just some videos I've rounded up on YouTube. Video 3 years old, from white space to Idris. Interview with the creator. Another one, Scala versus Idris. Four years ago. And then this one, dependent types in the Idris programming language. So all, things I've touched on the reasons there, I thought I'd just include those. And I'm sure you can find other stuff as well. There is a crash course in Idris 2 that you can run through. So yeah, you can see there that, there's on the website, it's really good, plus the book. Yeah, so no shortage of tutorials you can go through if that's, how you like to learn. If you like more hands-on, Idris is on Exorcism, and it's got the usual suspects here. So if you like doing that thing that I sometimes like doing to get used to code shapes by sort of working on the same problem in different languages, this is a great way to do that. It gets you used to code shapes, you know, in functional modules and stuff like that. So that's quite handy. And then this chap, yeah. So no Idris for you at the moment. Yeah, apart from this video. So at some point, once I get comfortable in the language, I will create this. But in next week's video, C++, I do have some content. So there we have it. Hopefully enjoyed that. Interesting programming language to look at, and I'm certainly looking at seeing what mashups I can do between this and some foundation model shenanigans. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.